Hello all. In this video, I'll be talking about risk management in software development. Uh, what is software risk, different types of software risk, and some risk management techniques will be discussed here. So, first of all, what is a software risk? Although there has been a considerable debate about the proper definition for the software risk, there is general agreement that risk always involves two characteristics, that is, uncertainty and loss. Uncertainty means the risk may or may not happen. That is, there is no 100% probability that a risk may occur. So that is the uncertainty of a risk. And loss. Loss, if the risk becomes a reality, unwanted consequences or losses will occur. So we cannot give a proper definition for software risk, but we can define it in using these two characteristics, that is the uncertainty of risk and the loss that can occur because of this risk. So when risks are analyzed, it is important to quantify the level of uncertainty and the degree of loss associated with each risk, and there are different categories of risk considered or different types of risk considered. That is what we are going to discuss here. So first one is project risk. Project risks are the risks that threaten the project plan. That is, if a project risk becomes real or a project risk occurs, it is likely that the project schedule will slip and that cost will increase. Okay, so basically the project risk is going to identify the potential budgetary, the schedule of the project, the personal staffing and organization personal resource, then the customer and the requirements problems and their impact on software project. So the project complexity, size and the degree of structural uncertainty are also defined as some of the project risk factors. So basically project risk identifies the or threatens the project plan. That is a project risk. Then you have technical risk. Technical risk mainly threatens the quality and timeliness of the software to be produced. That is, it is basically threatening the quality of the product and the timeliness of the software to be produced or the delivery time of the product. That is, if a technical risk becomes a reality, the implementation will be difficult or impossible, and the problems that will cause because the implementation is not possible. That is technical risk. So technical risks identify potential design, implementation, interface, verification and maintenance problems. And in addition, you have specification ambiguity, technical uncertainty, technical obsolescence and leading edge technology as some of the risk factors. Technical risks occur because the problem is harder to solve than we thought it would be. That is why there will be difficulty in implementation, and if these difficulties occur, these are the problems that are going to occur in a project. So that is technical risk. Then third type of risk is business risk. Business risks mainly threaten the viability of the software to be built. So it mainly jeopardize the process or even the product. So, candidates for top five business risks there are different kinds of business risks that can occur. So, there are some of the top five business risks that may occur are given here. First one is a market risk. That is, market risk means you are building you are building a very excellent product or system, but no one really wants that product right now. That kind of risk is called a market risk. Then another kind of business risk that can occur is you are building a product that no longer fits into overall business strategy for the company. That is strategic risk. That is, the company have a particular kind of strategy, and during one period, and a product was designed based on those strategies, and but all these kind of strategies were changed in a later period, and at that time this product will become what it's no longer fits into that business. That is strategic risk. Then third kind of business risk that can occur is building a product that the sales force doesn't understand how to sell. That is, um, uh, some products which is which is difficult to understand its technology by the sales force. Such kind of business risk may occur. Then fourth kind of business risk is losing the support of senior management due to a change in focus or a change in people. That is called management risk. So if you do not have a support from the senior management, then management risk may occur. And the and another kind of, or the fifth kind of business risk that may occur are losing budgetary or personal commitment. That is budget risk. That is, you have financial troubles. That is financial troubles, and we are losing the budget. Then budget risk may occur. These are top five business risks that can occur, and there can be many other business risks that can occur which will threaten the viability of the software to be built. So this is one kind of classification of risk, that is, we are classifying it into project risk, technical risk, and business risk. Another categorization is, or classification, we classify the risk as non-risk, predictable risk, and unpredictable risk. These are also some types of risk. Non-risk means those that can be uncovered after careful evaluation of the project plan, the business and technical environment in which the project is being developed, and other reliable information sources. Okay, that is, if we are analyzing the project plan and the whole business and technical environment of the product, and also the other reliable information sources like unrealistic delivery date, lack of documented requirements, software scope, poor development environment, such factors. From all of this, you can understand these kind of risk will occur. That risk are known as non-risk. Then another category is predictable risk. Predictable risk means they are extrapolated from past project experiences, like staff turnover, poor communication with the customer, dilution of staff effort as ongoing maintenance requests are serviced, such kind of risks that can be predicted from the past experiences on similar projects. They are called predictable risks. And the last category of risk is unpredictable risk. Unpredictable risk means they can and do occur, but they are extremely difficult to identify in advance. They are unpredictable risks. Now we are moving into risk analysis and management. Risk analysis and management are a series of steps that helps a software team to understand and manage uncertainty. Many problems can plague a software project, and a risk is a potential problem that might happen or might not. But regardless of the outcome, it's always a really good idea to identify it, assess its probability of occurrence, estimate its impact, and establish a contingency plan that should uh, the problem if the problem actually occur. So all the risk analysis activities have a single goal to assist the project team in developing a strategy for dealing with the risk, and the best or the most effective strategy must consider mainly three issues, that is risk avoidance, risk monitoring, risk management, and contingency planning. And this risk analysis and management goes through different steps. And the first step is risk identification, that you recognize what can go wrong. And then next step, each risk is analyzed to determine the likelihood that it will occur and the damage it will do if it does occur. And once this information is established, the risks are ranked by the probability and impact, and finally a plan is developed to manage those risks with high probability and high impact. So the work product of this risk analysis and management is a RMMM plan, or risk mitigation, monitoring and management plan. So first step is risk identification. In risk identification, the risks are identified in a systematic way, or it is a systematic attempt to specify threats to the project plan. By identifying the known and predictable risks, the project manager takes the first step towards avoiding them when possible and controlling them when necessary. There are two distinct types of risk for each of the categories, that is generic risk and product specific risk. Whether it is known risk or a predictable risk, there will be generic risk and product specific risk. Generic risks are a potential threat to every kind of software project, and product specific risks can be identified only by those with clear understanding of the technology, the people, the environment that is specific to the project at hand. So it will be specific to the product or the project. So that are the two categories of risk that are possible. So one method of identifying the risk is to create a risk item checklist. You can make checklist of uh, possible risks. That is the one method for identifying risk. And this checklist can be used for risk identification and focus on some subset of known and predictable risks in the following generic subcategories. Okay. So these subcategories are product size risk, business impact risk, customer characteristics risk, process definition risk, development environment risk, technology to be built risk, staff size and experience risk. These are the different subcategories or generic subcategories. What is product size risk? Product size risk is associated with the overall size of the software to be built or modified. Business impact risk is associated with the constraints imposed by the management or the marketplace. Then customer characteristics risk is associated with the sophistication of the customer and the developer's ability to communicate with the customer in a timely manner. Process definition risks are associated with the degree to which the software process has been defined and is followed by the development organization. Development environment risk associated with the availability and quality of the tools to be used to build the product. Technology to be built risk is associated with the complexity of the system to be built and the newness of the technology that is packaged by the system. And staff size and experience risks are associated with the overall technical and project experience of the software engineers who will do the work. So these are the different subcategories, and the risks are categorized into this different subcategories. Then this risk item checklist can be organized in different ways. The questions relevant to each of the topics can be answered for each software project. The answers to these questions allow the planner to estimate the impact of the risk. Then a different risk item checklist format can be made. That is, you simply list the characteristics that are relevant to each generic subcategory. And finally, a set of risk components and drivers are listed along with their probabilities of occurrence. So, risk components and drivers means the risk components are certain defined things, or certain risk components are defined, and these are some of the defined risk components, that is performance risk, cost risk, support risk, and schedule risk. So performance risk is the degree of uncertainty that the product will meet its requirements and be fit for its intended use. Cost risk is the degree of uncertainty that the project's budget will be maintained. Support risk is the degree of uncertainty that the resultant software will be easy to correct, adapt, and enhance. Schedule risk is the degree of uncertainty that the project schedule will be maintained and that the product will be delivered on time. So, these are the risk components, and the impact of each risk driver on the risk component can be divided into 4 impact categories, that as negligible, marginal, critical, or catastrophic. And you can develop a impact assessment on the risk drivers like this. That is, you have different risk components and its corresponding impact on a particular risk driver. So we can develop an impact assessment like this. Then you can do risk projection. In risk projection, what we do is we estimate the risk. That is simply risk estimation. And in risk estimation, the attempts to rate each risk in 2 ways. That is the likelihood or probability that the risk is real, and the consequences of the problem associated with the risk should it occur. That is, if you have a risk, the probability that it will occur and the impact of that risk. These are the 2 things that you are going to rate. So the project planner, along with other managers and technical staffs, perform 4 risk projection activities. That is, you establish a scale that reflects the perceived likelihood of a risk, then delineate the consequences of the risk, and estimate the impact of the risk on the project and the product, and note overall accuracy of the risk projection so that there will be no misunderstanding. So this is what they are going to do in risk projection. You scale perceived likelihood of a risk, delineate the consequences of the risk, estimate the impact of the risk, and note the overall accuracy of the risk projection. So that for that what we are going to do is first develop a risk table. So risk table provides the project manager with a simple technique for risk projection. That is, this is a risk table. Here you have an example for risk table. What it contains is, in the first column we have a risk list of all the risks that can occur in that project. So all the risks are listed in the first column of the risk table, and this can be accomplished with the help of risk item checklist that we have seen in the last topic. Then each risk is categorized in the second column. Second column you have PS, BU, CU. These are different categories of risk. That is, PS implies project risk, then BU implies business risk, etc. So the probability, that is the second column, and in the third column you have the probability of occurrence of each risk. So probability of occurrence of each risk is entered in the third column, and the probability value of each risk can be estimated by the team members individually, and the individual team members are polled in round robin fashion until their assessment of risk probability begins to converge. Next, the impact of each risk is assessed, and each risk component is assessed using the characterization that we have presented in the previous figure, that is this figure. Using this figure, you are going to determine the impact factor or impact of the risk. And an impact category is determined, and the category of each of the four risk components, that is performance, support, cost and schedule, are averaged to determine the overall impact value for the risk. Okay, so once the first four columns of the risk table have been completed, then the table is sorted by probability and by impact, and the high probability, high impact risk will percolate to the top of the table, and low probability risk will drop to the bottom of the table. And this is the first order risk prioritization. Now, how this risk impact is assessed? The following steps are recommended to determine the overall consequences of a risk or the overall impact of a risk. First step is to determine the average probability of occurrence value for each risk component. Then second, you have to determine the impact for each component based on the criteria shown in figure 6.1. Figure 6.1 means this figure. Using this figure, you have to determine the risk impact. Then third step, you have to Complete the risk table and analyze the results as described in the preceding section. Then you can find the overall risk exposure. Overall risk exposure RE is determined using the following relationship, that is RE equal to P into C, where P is the probability of occurrence for a risk and C is the cost to the project should the risk occur. Then you have risk assessment. How you perform risk assessment? During risk assessment, we further examine the accuracy of estimates that were made during the risk projection and attempt to rank the risks that have been uncovered and begin thinking about ways to control or avoid risks that are likely to occur. So for that you perform the following steps. That is, you define the risk reference levels for the project, then attempt to develop a relationship between RI, LI and XI. That is, RI is risk, LI is the likelihood of the risk and XI is the impact of the risk. So you try to develop a relationship between RI, LI and XI and each of the reference levels that you have defined for the project. Then as a third step, you predict the set of reference points that define a region of termination bounded by a curve or areas of uncertainty, like this. This shows a curve of where curve of area of uncertainty where you have a reference point and above this reference point the project will terminate. So similarly you are going to develop a curve. You are going to predict set of reference points that define a region of termination. Then finally you try to predict how compound combinations of risk will affect a reference level. Okay. That is risk assessment. Now you have risk mitigation, monitoring and management. Risk mitigation, monitoring and management is the strategy that you are going to follow for effective risk management. Okay, so if a software team adopts a proactive approach to risk, then avoidance is always the best strategy. So this is achieved by developing a plan for risk mitigation. For example, here we have an example. Here, if a staff turnover is a noted project risk with high likelihood and critical impact. For example, suppose they have a high staff turnover as a project risk R1 and based on the past history and management intuitions, the likelihood of the risk is high, that is estimated to be 0.70 or 70 percentage, which is really high, and the impact is projected at level 2. Then that means it has a high turnover with a critical impact on project cost and schedule. If such a situation is there, then to mitigate the risk, the project management must develop a strategy for reducing the turnover. Among the possible steps to be taken are meet the current staff to determine the causes for turnover. Then second, mitigate those causes that are under our control before the project starts. Once the project commences, assume the turnover will occur and develop techniques to ensure continuity when people leave. Then organize project teams so that the information about each development activity is widely dispersed. Define documentation standards and establish mechanisms to be sure that documents are developed in a timely manner. Conduct peer reviews of all work and assign a backup staff member for every critical technologist. So this is a mitigation plan, and you try to mitigate using this plan. Then as the project proceeds, the risk monitoring activity commences, or risk monitoring should be continuing. Okay, so in risk monitoring, the project manager monitors factors that may provide an indication of whether the risk is becoming more or less likely. So, in the case of high staff turnover, the one we have seen just before, that in that case, the following factors can be monitored. That is, the general attitude of team members based on project pressure, then the degree to which the team is gelled, then interpersonal relationship among team members, potential problems with compensation and benefits, availability of jobs within the company and outside it. So these are the things that we can monitor for that risk. So, in addition to monitoring these factors, the project manager should monitor the effectiveness of risk mitigation steps also. For example, a risk mitigation step that was noted was for definition of documentation standards and mechanisms to be sure that the documents are developed in a timely manner. So that was a mitigation step. So the project manager had to monitor that the effectiveness of that step. This is one of mechanism for ensuring the continuity should a critical individual leave the project, and the project manager should monitor the documents carefully to ensure that each can stand on its own and that each impacts information that would be necessary if a newcomer were forced to join the software team somewhere in the middle of the project. Okay. So that is risk monitoring, and finally you have risk management and contingency planning. In risk management, this assumes that the mitigation efforts have failed and the risk has become a reality. Okay, that means the risk has occurred. So, continuing with the previous examples, the project is well underway and the number of people announces that they will be leaving. That is, they are going to leave the project. If the mitigation strategy has been followed, backup is available, information is documented, and knowledge has been dispersed across the team. Okay. In addition, the project manager may temporarily refocus resources to those functions that are fully staffed, enabling the newcomers who must be added to the team to get up to the speed. Also, those individuals who are leaving are asked to stop all work and spend their last weeks only in knowledge transfer. That is, this might be include video-based knowledge capture, the development of commentary documents, or meeting with other team members who will remain on the project, etc. Okay. So this is how they are going to perform risk management and contingency planning. For a For a large project, 30 or 40 risks may be identified, and if between 3 and 7 risk management steps are identified for each, and the risk management may become a project in itself. For this reason, we adapt some Pareto 80-20 rule to software risk. Experiences indicates that 80% of overall project risk can be accounted for by only 20% of the identified risk. Okay. So that's all about risk management. Thank you.